Welcome, everybody, to Survive and Advance on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. Survive and Advance is brought to you, of course, by the Future of Sports Medicine, Replenishing Care and Technologies. If you want to find out more about them, go to the banner on the gruelingtruth.net website. Find out all you need to know about Replenishing Care and Technologies. I'm your co-host for Survive and Advance, Mike Goodpaster. Right now I want to welcome in our other co-host, 1981 National Championship team, combined for 26 points with Isaiah Thomas, basically carried the Hoosiers to the championship, him and Isaiah. Help me welcome to the show, Steve Risley.
You know, Mike, for the first time, that introduction in a while is kind of a little apropos for today's show, since we're going to be shifting gears from football for a day.
You don't even know what apropos means.
Yeah, it means kind of appropriate.
Okay.
Kind of a French definition of appropriate.
Well, if it's French, you obviously know it because you're probably part French.
As I'm having my croissant.
Yep. Your croissant. All right, so speaking of French, he's not from Montreal, but he does live in Toronto. Help us welcome to the Grueling Truth, Steve's illegitimate stepbrother, Lukas Weese. How you doing, Lucas?
Hey, Mike, I'm doing well. Glad to be on the show again, talking about a great topic today, college basketball.
Yeah, and today we're talking the 10 greatest teams in college basketball history. Of course, Steve's will be the 1981 Indiana Hoosiers. But we're going to go ahead and we'll start off. Well, it's because you couldn't, because then we'd have made fun of you just because you were putting your own team on there.
You know what I researched? Here's what I researched. Okay, I'm doing my homework trying to find, make sure I'm getting this all done right. And of the 5 national championship teams, the 81 team is ranked the 4th worst in the top national championship teams of all time. I mean, 53 is ahead of us, 87 is ahead of us, and 76 is ahead of us. And we're 4th. And I think, good God, that's no respect. No way to start a beautiful Wednesday morning.
Your ring's about the same as all the other ones, though. And you know the reason is the loss to Pan American, the 9 losses. I think at one point in the 1981 season, weren't you guys like 9-7?
We were 7-5 going into the Big Ten.
7-5. All right, so that's why. I mean, it just you didn't step it up and put the team on your back until the tournament run.
We got a ring out of the deal, so what the hell? Who cares? And that's nothing more than somebody's opinion. Like everything we're doing today is nothing more than our opinions.
All right, so as yesterday's show with the top teams, we're just going one season, single season. Lucas, you want to start us off with number 10? Don't say anything stupid.
So my number 10 is the 81-82 North Carolina Tar Heels. This was a team, of course, coached by the legendary Dean Smith, consisted of James Worthy, Sam Perkins, and, of course, the freshman Michael Jordan. They went 32-2 that year to a national championship, which was captured by MJ's game-winning shot. Everyone on that team who was in the starting lineup, I believe, shot over 50%. So they were just an incredible team, and they're in my number 10 spot, the 81-82 North Carolina Tar Heels.
Yeah, actually I have them slightly higher. And I think what people forget is the best player on that team was James Worthy. It wasn't Michael Jordan.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, really, it's possible Jordan was the 3rd best player on that team because you had Sam Perkins, who was really good, too. Yeah. Steve?
Now, I put one more caveat in it that I'm sure you guys didn't have the ability to put in my selections. I also included a caveat of teams that either I did play that I loved to play, which were great teams, or teams that I wished I could have played that I never got to play, which were great teams. Having played some of these teams on my list and gotten to play against them, I included that caveat in mine. So mine's going to be a little different. I'm probably going to catch a little crap here for number 10, but I put down the 78-79 Indiana State Sycamores basketball team simply because they went undefeated until the championship game, and I would have given my left whatever to get an official game against Larry Bird in college. I would have loved to have seen what we could have done with him. I don't think they would have beat us.
Oh, come on, Steve.
If I put our best team against his best team, I don't think they would have. I think Knight would have figured out how to cut Bird down. Well, it's why I said I would have. That's why I put him at number 10. I would have loved to have played him. I think they were a great basketball team led by one of the greatest players ever to play the game. And it's a missed opportunity for me because it was in my wheelhouse, in my time frame. They were less than 100 miles away from us, and we just never got to play them, and I would have loved to. But I still think it's worthy of a mention. I could easily slot them in at number 10. There are a lot of great teams out there that aren't going to get mentioned, but I think what Indiana State accomplished that year with the talent level they had top to bottom was just absolutely remarkable.
Steve?
Yeah.
You wouldn't have beat Indiana State. You realize that, right?
I don't know. No, I don't know. I think we would have.
Steve, you lost to Pepperdine. You lost to Texas A&M.
And we beat the heart and soul of your 82 North Carolina team, too. We beat
You beat the what?
The heart and soul of your 82 North Carolina team that you and I are going to rank higher.
You didn't, Steve.
Number 10.
You just didn't. You didn't play North Carolina in the 78-79 season.
No, I'm talking 80, 81, 82.
Yeah, but Steve, you can't say I wish my 81 team would have played against them. Your 81 team would have killed them because the 81 team was a national championship team.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, if you would have played them, it would have been with the 79 team, and that wouldn't have went well. It's just a guess on my end. But, I mean, Michigan State, you guys weren't even in the games against Michigan State.
No, Michigan State was a much better team than Indiana State was. They won that game.
Yeah, but Indiana State was in the game with Michigan State. You guys lost to Michigan State by 30 points the first time.
I don't know. In 79, we had Woodson, we had Carter. We didn't have Turner yet. We had Tolbert. We didn't have Isaiah yet. Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't have had probably as much success with them in 79. But if I'd have put my 81 team against them, I think we'd
beat them. But that's why you guys won the national championship. The bigger question is, does the 81 Hoosiers beat the 79 Michigan State team?
We didn't in 79. We did in 78, but not in 79. They won all 3 games against us that year. They were a great team.
Yeah, but that's my point here. So I can see you saying your 81 team beats them, but if you say your 81 team beats them, why wouldn't your 81 team be ahead of them?
I consider that Bird's best team, and I consider 81 our best team. But anyway, I have Indiana State at number 10.
All right. My number 10 is a team I think both of you will have forgotten, but I think they were the best defensive team in the history of college basketball, and that's the 83-84 Georgetown Hoyas. You had Patrick Ewing, who was a great defensive player. If you look at him, you remember Michael Graham, who was one of the more intimidating guys I think that played. And if you look at their the tournament run, to get to the Final Four, to get to the national championship game, they gave up 36 points, 48 points, 49 and 40, and then they beat high-powered Houston Cougars with Hakeem Olajuwon 84-75. I think this team gets really underrated, and I think the main reason they're underrated is every Georgetown team was good defensively, but you had a guy like Gene Smith, Bill Martin, they could all score. Michael Jackson was a good offensive player, but then you're bringing in off the bench guys like Horace Broadnax, Michael Graham, who I brought up before, David Wingate. You had Reggie Williams, who was a hell of an NBA player also. So my number 10 is Georgetown. Anybody want to yell at that?
No, I played against
Ewing. Solid pick.
Solid pick. I played against Ewing, I think. It must have been his freshman year then, because he was around 83 and 84. We must have played him in 81. And he was a solid player. And in his day, John Thompson was as good a coach as there was.
I don't know about that, but it was a hell of a team.
Yeah, it was a hell of a team. Yeah. So that's a good call.
And I'll just go ahead and I'll give my number 2 or my number 9 because my number 9 was Lucas's number 10, and that was the 81-82 Tar Heels. I mean, that was a great basketball team. They beat Georgetown. Actually, the freshman year for Ewing was 1982. That was the year that they played each other. And it was a great basketball team. I think it was Dean Smith's best team with Worthy, Jordan, Perkins, Matt Doherty, Jimmy Black. It was a deep team. You had Buzz Peterson, I think, got playing time as a freshman, Jim Braddock. I think anytime you put Worthy, Jordan, and Perkins on the floor at the same time, that's got to be a top 10 team. Steve, what do you got at 9?
At 9, I got Michigan State, 79 Michigan State team with Kelser, Johnson. Again, a team I loved playing. We didn't beat them, the 79. But they had Ron Charles, Jay Vincent, Irvin Johnson, Greg Kelser, Mike Bergovich and Terry Donnelly were tough guards for them. They were fairly deep. Jed Heathcote was a more than formidable coach in the Big Ten. at that point in time. And, they ended up beating Indiana State that year for the national championship. We all know what, many of those guys went on to play pro ball. Kelser, Vincent, Johnson, and Charles all played in the NBA for a stretch. And that was just a real fun team to play against. It was always a knockdown, drag-out fight when we did play them. We didn't beat them that year, but it was not our strongest team either. But I had them at number 9. So
yeah, and I'll tell you, Steve, did you realize every game they lost that year was by 1 or 2 points, except somehow in 1979, their only loss that was a big loss, they lost 83-65 at Northwestern.
Yeah.
And if you look at them, every other loss was by a point or two to a team that was ranked.
Yeah.
So, and I think
I don't have that in front of me, but I believe you. That, they were a good basketball team. They were formidable. It's as good a team as I ever played against in college. One of the two.
Yeah, and I think the difference between them and Indiana State was Indiana State had Bird, Michigan State had Magic Johnson, but I think people forget the difference in that championship game to me was Greg Kelser. Kelser was the next best player on the floor, and the other thing I don't think people realize, Greg Kelser was actually the leading scorer on that team.
Well, and I tell people this when I talk about that year in that team, that Greg Kelser was probably the best athletic basketball player I ever played against. In terms of not necessarily the greatest player. Magic was the greatest player I ever played against, but athletically, as far as leaping, I couldn't guard him. I was physical and I was strong, but I couldn't keep up with him. He was quicker. He could fly over me. I had nothing for Greg Kelser, no matter what I tried to do. And virtually, we didn't. We didn't have anybody on the team at that point in time. Ray couldn't really handle him at that point in time. I ended up guarding Vincent most of the time because we banged bodies a lot. And but he was the greatest pure athletic basketball player I probably ever faced.
Yeah, and I think the thing that's impressive about that, when you say Ray couldn't guard him, you're not going to find many better basketball athletes than Ray Tolbert.
Exactly. And Ray may be the top 5 of the greatest athletes I've ever practiced and played against in terms of athletic ability, but nobody had anything for Greg Kelser. I'm really surprised he didn't do more in the NBA than he did. Because I just thought pure talent-wise, he was just so gifted athletically. But you're right. He was the leading scorer of that team. And, that was a very formidable team. And I could easily rank him higher, but I don't know why I didn't. There's other great teams out there, too. So.
Well, I think the hardest thing about ranking them higher is just the fact that you had 2 studs and then you had a bunch of guys. Like Berkovich, Donnelly, they could shoot the hell out of the ball, but nobody's going to say that they're great players.
No, in which, Jay Vincent actually had a better pro career than Kelser did, because Jay got drafted by Dallas and played a while in the NBA, and had a fairly decent NBA career. So, all
right, Lucas, number 9.
Number 9, I got the 89-90 UNLV Rebels. This was a team that went 35-5 in the regular season. They were 7th in the nation in points per game. They had Larry Johnson, who averaged a double-double for the year, I believe, Greg Anthony, Stacey Augman, and they beat Duke, perennial college basketball program, by 30 points in the national championship game, which is, I think, one of the largest margins of victory in a national championship game. So I like Jerry Tarkanian's team, and I got them at number 9.
Yeah, I've actually got them higher. And you look at them, Larry Johnson, Anderson Hunt, Stacey Augman, Greg Anthony. Greg Anthony had a really good pro career. The thing that stood out to me was this on them. The closest they got to losing was Chandler Thompson and Ball State. That was a 69-67 game. And other than that, I think Georgia Tech gave them trouble in the semifinal, but you talked about it. The way they beat Loyola Marymount in the Elite Eight, I think they beat them by 30. Then they come and they win the national championship by 30. I think they have to be anybody's top 10 except for probably Steve Risley. Steve?
Yeah.
Are they in your top 10?
Yeah,
okay. I think they're one of the 3 best teams I've seen since I was alive. They were pretty good.
Yeah, they were good. They were one of the most dominant teams to run through the tournament. They smoked people.
Yeah,
so,
except Chandler Thompson almost got him.
Yeah, but almost only counts in horseshoes, hand grenades, jar starts, and parts. So.
But that's a lot of things that close counts for. All right. Number 8, Lucas, what do you got?
Number 8, I got the 75-76 Indiana Hoosiers. They went undefeated that year under Coach Bob Knight. Yeah, I mean, you know, in my top 10, you got to have some undefeated teams, and they were the last team to go undefeated. So, yeah, I mean, give all the credit to the Hoosier, 75-76, and obviously I'm sure you guys can provide more of the information, especially you, Steve, but I like 75-76 undefeated Hoosier.
All right. We're not even going to comment on this because I believe me and Steve probably have that team a lot higher, Steve.
Yeah, yeah, and it'll go back to my same Miami Dolphins principles of yesterday. You know, when team
well,
goes
you can't
undefeated,
because if you do that on this, Steve, there would be 10 undefeated teams in your top 10.
And there may be half of them, the rest of them might well be undefeated teams.
There you go. All right, my number 8 are the 1960 Ohio State Buckeyes, led by Hall of Famer John Havlicek, Jerry Lucas. I think Lucas was 24.3 points. Or no, wait, it was Havlicek averaged 24. I mean, Lucas averaged like 17. I mean, this team was dominant. And when you talk about them in the tournament, when you look at them, they beat Western Kentucky by 19. They beat Georgia Tech by 17. They beat New York University by 22. And then they blow out California in the championship game by 20. They were the best team in the Big Ten at a point where the Big Ten was probably the best conference in basketball without a problem. I think we can all say that. So my number 8 are the 1960 Ohio State Buckeyes. Steve?
My number 8 was the 82 Tar Heels. Basically, without Jordan, it's pretty much the team we beat the year before. Most of those players that you mentioned on that year were around in 81 when we beat.
Well, you did take away Al Wood.
Yeah, we took away Al Wood, but we gave back Michael Jordan. So, you know, and at that point in their careers, I'm not sure that Al Wood.
Yeah, I think Al Wood of 1981 was better than Michael Jordan of 1982.
In 82, right? But we know what happens down the road, obviously.
Yeah,
you know, Michael.
He turned out pretty decent.
Turned out all right, but so yeah, I definitely like that team. To beat North Carolina in the national championship game, a team of that composition, that was a lot of fun. It was a great basketball team, and I was actually kind of happy for them to come back and win it the next year because I wasn't a big fan of Georgetown. Yeah, it's good. So, we beat that team, like I said, with the exception of trading Wood for Jordan, so that was my number 8 pick.
All right, what's your number 7, Steve?
My number 7 pick was the UNLV team. So we already talked about it, no sense in repeating that, but I did have them at number 7. Again, I think that was a very dominant basketball team. And, just a real fun team to go out and watch play. You know, Larry, Grandmama Johnson leading the charge with those guys. And there's a lot of talent. A lot of guys have played NBA ball off that basketball team. They played like an NBA team. So that was my number 7 pick.
All right, Lucas, number 7.
My number 7 is the 1990-91 Duke Blue Devils. Of course, we just mentioned they, lost by 30 to UNLV. They come back the following year. They actually won 2 consecutive national championships.
So do you think this is the better of the 2 teams?
I think it is. I think, Leitner, Hill, Hurley, McCaffrey, and some other guys, they all averaged, I believe, above 11-plus points per game.
Don't forget Cherokee Parks.
Yeah, him as well. And, obviously 91, 92 is a little bit more memorable just because of that famous Elite 8 game, probably one of the greatest shots in basketball history. Hill.
No, it was the greatest shot in basketball history. And if you want to see why, just go to Kentucky and wear a Christian Leitner T-shirt.
Yeah, well, trust me. Yeah, no, it's for sure. So, I'll go 90-91. It's debatable. They both are national championship teams, but I'll go 90-91 as the better of the 2 in my number 7.
Well, I think you're nuts with that, but we'll talk about that later. My number 7, I've got the 1963-64 UCLA Bruins. It was, I think it was the first great UCLA team. They beat Duke in the national championship, 98-83. Of course, I think that was Gail Goodrich, Walt Hazzard. I think they went 34-0, 30-0, something like that. Also, Kenny Washington. And the thing amazing about this team is the tallest player on the team was 6'7". So basically the 5 guys on the floor most of the time were 6'5" and under. I think this was Wooden, maybe one of Wooden's best coaching jobs, because if you look at the scores here in these games, there were a lot of close games for them. And even in the tournament, I mean, the first round of the tournament, they win 95-90. The second round, they win 76-72. Then they beat Kansas State in the Final Four, 90-80. Actually, their biggest win was against number 3 Duke, who they beat 98-83 in a national championship game. So my number 7 is the 64 UCLA Bruins. Lucas, who you got at 6?
I got that as number 6, Mike. I just got that a little bit higher for all the reasons you mentioned. It was John Wooden's probably first great UCLA team, and, I mean, just a terrific team. Gail Goodrich, I believe, is on that team, and he went on to have a Hall of Fame NBA career. So, yeah, I got that team on my number 6.
All right, Steve.
I had the OSU team, the Ohio State team, with Havlicek and Lucas, and I think there was a reserve forward there, 6'5", out of Oldville, Ohio. Yeah. Yeah, I had them. That was a great basketball team at that point in time. And, a little sentimental pick there because of Coach, but I think it's well-deserving to be there. It was a great team. A lot of those guys went on and had great accomplishments in basketball down the road. And, so that was my number 6 team.
All right, we get a 5, Steve.
Number 5, I kind of like the argument, and we just talked about it. I had the Duke team. I kind of lumped them together. I'm going to separate them, but I had 91, 91, 92. That basically was essentially pretty much the same team. And they actually lost the year before. They were 3 straight years in the championship game.
Well, see, this is my difference on it real quick. In 91, they did beat UNLV in the Final Four, but that 92 team was so dominant. I mean, they destroyed Michigan in the national championship game. Right,
and it was the Fab Five. And I was going to say I lumped them together, but then I'm going to go with the 92 team for 2 reasons. One, because they beat the Fab Five, and secondly, I never got the privilege to try to do it, but I think the repeat the next year has got to be one of the most difficult things in the world to do. And so I would probably agree with you, Mike, that I would probably take the 92 team over the 91 team. I think the 91 team lives off that shot. I mean, it was a great basketball team, no doubt about it, but it lives a lot. A lot of the lifeblood into that 91 team is the shot that Leitner hit. That's what people remember. And, and it is arguably the greatest shot ever in college basketball. But I think the 92 team to come back and grind through another year with the bullseye on their back and to win it a second time, actually be in the championship game for the 3rd straight year, I would have to probably edge out the 92 team over the 91 team. But I had them at number 5.
Yeah, I just think when you get to 92, everybody's a senior. Everybody's better than what they were the year before. That's the main thing to me.
Right.
So I really don't know what Lucas is smoking up there in Canada, but something needs to be done about it.
I mean, it's a
lumped together.
Like I said, I lumped them together.
I'm just kidding, Lucas. You don't have to get so defensive all the time.
I just lumped them all together.
All right, my number 5, the San Francisco Dons, 1955-56. You had Bill Russell. You had Casey Jones. They go, I think, 29-0 in the tournament. Nobody gave them a game. They beat everybody by double digits. They walked through UCLA by 11. They beat Utah, SMU, beat Iowa in a national championship game, the best team in the Big Ten. And my thing is, the reason I got him so high is Bill Russell was a transcendent player, college-wise and NBA-wise. And that's a team because of Bill Russell. You throw them almost at any time, and they're going to be hard for anybody to beat.
Right.
Lucas, number 5.
My number 5 is the 95-96 Kentucky Wildcats. This was team coached by Rick Pitino pre-scandal days. It was a great team. It had
there is no pre-scandal days in Kentucky.
Days with Rick in Kentucky or with Rick Pitino.
Yeah, pre-scandal days in Kentucky would have been 1900.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before Naismith invented the game.
Yeah, that was pre-scandal days for the University of Kentucky.
Yeah. As I'm looking at the original rules of basketball, which are sitting right here on my desk right now.
And the thing that blows my mind is you would put this team ahead of the 1975-76 Indiana Hoosiers.
No, I mean, I just, look, I have some undefeated teams above the Kentucky team.
We're not talking about undefeated teams. We are talking about the greatest teams ever. And I don't think Tony Delk, Antoine Walker, Walter McCarty, Ron Mercer, who was the fifth starter, Derek Anderson? I mean, I just don't see how that team gets on this list.
That averaged 91.8 points per game. They were second in the nation in scoring. They had a great tournament. They beat Syracuse in the national championship, 76-67. I mean, I like the team. I mean, they were a fun team to watch. Nothing to take away from the Hoosiers. I mean, again, it's so but I got Kentucky number 5.
Steve.
My number 5 was Duke. So I already given my number 5.
Did you? Okay, give us number 4 then, Steve.
Number 4 for me was the San Francisco Dons, Steve. I really angsted over the two teams I think where they made bigger than life statements was the '56 Dons and obviously the Texas Western team, the Haskins Texas Western team, which became UTEP. And so I angsted between all of those, but I thought. I wanted to include the revolution and change of the game and the bringing in of color basically into the game at a dominant force. And I just thought that the Dons probably, with a 2-year run there, were just a better basketball team overall. And so I chose them instead. But you certainly can make a case for Texas Western and what they accomplished. But I had them at number 4.
All right, Lucas, 4.
The Dons were my number 4 too, for all the reasons you guys mentioned. They were just a great team. Bill Russell changed the face of the game.
Well, that was easy. All right. Did I give a number? No, my number 4 would be the 1990 UNLV team. And we've already discussed it, but that was a team that played at a very high level offensively and defensively, so I'm going there at 4. Lucas, 3.
My number 3 is the 56-57 North Carolina Tar Heels. Frank McGuire led the Heels to a 32-0 record, including 14 ACC wins. Lenny Rosenbluth led the team to success all season long, putting up 28 points and 9 boards per game. And the Heels capped off a nail-biting win over Kansas, 54-53 in the national championship. So I like the 56-57 Tar Heels as my number 3.
All right. Steve, 3.
I just 72-73 Bruins, UCLA. With Farmer, Wilkes, Walton, Greg Lee, and Larry Holefield was the starting 5. They went 30-0, ranked number 1. The second of 2 great teams that came out of that era, the Walton-led era of UCLA. But just I personally think this, Mike. I know you're going to disagree with me, and that's okay. But I think the Walton era of UCLA was more dominant than the Alcindor era of UCLA. And I say this because I think the level of competition was starting to really evolve more in the early 70s than was around when Alcindor was playing at Jabbar. I think that they were so dominant, and there just wasn't the level of competition in the 60s that there was. That the Canes started coming out. You saw Indiana start to emerge, saw other teams start to emerge coming out now. And the bullseye on the back of UCLA was getting so large at that point in time. I tend to favor more the Walton era than I do the Alcindor era. They're both great eras. And you literally could make a top 10 list of all the UCLA teams of that era. It would not be difficult to do. You could pepper in a couple of other teams, but I liked the Walton era. So I went with the 72-73 team as number 3.
I do too.
Okay.
What do you got at number 2, Lucas?
Number 2, I got 72-73 UCLA. For the reasons you guys mentioned, I'll just throw in 2 more things. They're the nation's third best points per game at 94.6. Bill Walton averaged over 20 points a game. They had guard Henry Bibby, Jamal Wilkes. It was an undefeated season, capping off beating Florida State 81-76 in the national championship. So I got the 72-73 Bruins as my number 2.
All right, my number 2, I've got the 1967-68 UCLA Bruins. This is my reason why I think they were more dominant. I think they were a better team. There were 6 guys on that team that averaged double figures. You had Lou Alcindor, Lucius Allen, Mike Warren, Lynn Shackelford, Mike Lynn, and Edgar Lacey coming off the bench averaged 12 points a game. I don't think we've seen too many teams more dominant than what they were. When you look at them, I mean, their closest game would have been at Purdue. That would have been Rick Mount Purdue. They beat Purdue by 2 points. After that, I mean, you look at them, they scored 120, 121, 109, 114, 95, 108, 104, 97, 93. I mean, they had the one loss to the great Elvin Hayes Houston team. But when you look at this team, they scored points at such a high rate. I mean, they beat North Carolina in the national championship game by 23. They avenged the loss to Houston 101-69. They beat Santa Clara by 27 points. I think they were dominant, and I don't know that there's ever been a team that's had 6 guys averaging double figures, Steve.
Yeah, I don't know that either. I mean, that's a stat you can look up easily, but I don't know. But, yeah, it's certainly – I mean, again, it just – I can't argue with that pick. I mean, because I can't argue with any pick of UCLA in that era.
Yeah, and I would not argue with your claim that Walton's teams were better. But I do think this. I think if they played each other, I think the guard play, just the overall talent around Alcindor was more.
I would give you that. I would give you the guard play is probably a little bit better in Alcindor.
And I think Alcindor and Walton in their primes would have been impossible for each other to guard each other. I think they both would have done whatever they wanted to do.
It would have been fun to watch. That would have been a hell of a game to sit and watch and just not.
Yeah, and Steve, we could agree on this though. They'd have beat the shit out of the 1996 Kentucky Wildcats.
Oh, I agree. Yeah. I looked at that Wildcat team. I pissed on them before I threw them away.
Yeah, I just don't know why any red-blooded American would have them ranked that high. But then I realize it's a freaking Canadian that's doing it.
So what
he'll probably, you know what? He'll have the Santa Clara Broncos with Steve Nash as the number 1 team of all time. But look what he got at number 2.
He probably has a Kentucky Wildcats T-shirt in his closet. I guarantee you he does.
Probably
does.
No,
Lucas, number 2.
I am a Tar Heels fan through and through.
Oh God, that's why. Go ahead. What do you got at number 2?
That explains
I already said my
everything.
number 2.
Oh, did you? What'd you have? I don't even remember.
I had.
You had UCLA. Steve, did you give your number 2?
No, my number 2 was the earlier, the 71-72 version of that UCLA team. I think it was 2 of the most dominant years. Again, I'm staying with the Walton era. The big thing they had in 71, they didn't have. They had Swin Nader as a backup center. And for those of you
Swin Nader was actually Swin Nader was a good basketball player.
He was. He had a stellar NBA career. He actually had some battles against Chamberlain, as I recall, as I can vaguely remember watching games.
Yeah, and I think Swin played for over a decade in the NBA.
He played a long career and was a journeyman, decent center in the NBA. But
yeah, and he was I think Kareem's backup center or the backup in the 1984 NBA Finals.
He may have been,
and then they got him out of there, and they brought in Michael Thompson, who was a much better player, and then they won in '85.
Yeah, and I played against Thompson in college.
Thompson was a good player.
Thompson was a great player, and I almost wanted to include that Minnesota team with McHale and Thompson.
But you can't because they just won the NIT.
They won the NIT. They never won anything big enough. But it was one of the bigger underachieving teams was that Minnesota team. When you look at the talent that team had. But so
I'm not as old as you, but I was like 11 or 12. And the thing I remembered with that team is they didn't really have anybody that could shoot the ball from the perimeter.
Yeah. Yeah. We never had any trouble beating them. I'm not sure we beat them every time we played them, but I remember that wasn't always a game that we were fretting. I know McHale, when I guarded McHale, he was brutal. His elbows and shoulders were so big and so strong and so barrel-chested, you couldn't do anything with him. And he was a great player. And
Lucas guarded him and had no problem with him. I just wanted to let you know that.
But anyway, number 2, I put the earlier version of the 72-73. So I had back-to-back 2 and 3, the 71-72, 72-73 UCLA Bruins. I can't argue with you with the Alcindor era. I just think that what that team accomplished with the competition was starting to evolve and out there at that point in time. You had great teams at North Carolina. You had great teams at Indiana starting to emerge. You had a lot of great teams all over. Not that there weren't in Alcindor's era, but I think back-to-back, those were probably the 2 best back-to-back teams of all time, both undefeated, both national champions, All
right, so I think I know where me and Steve are both going with number 1. So, Lucas, what's your number 1?
Yeah, my number 1 was your number 2, Mike, the 66-67 UCLA Bruins. I mean,
you mean 67-68?
Or whatever, 67-68.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so, for the reasons you mentioned, 6 players to average, that was just, incredible. And just, I know I have 3 UCLA teams in my top 10, but
it's hard not to.
They were a fantastic program, and you got to give them credit for continuing to just have that sustained success for a few years, and give credit to John Wooden and that team for bringing in some real quality, talented players. But
hey, Lucas,
67-68. Yeah.
Lucas, the rumor is that era of UCLA basketball was the best college basketball money could buy.
Yes.
With the Alumni Association.
Because it was.
The Walton claimed the Wooden claimed not to know anything about, but the legend is that was the best era of college basketball that any money could buy. Now, whether it's true or not, I don't know. It doesn't matter.
It's true. Even John Wooden said it was true. He just said he didn't know nothing about it.
Yeah, and he didn't want to know anything about it. But you still got, even if you buy those players, if it is true, you still have to put them on the court. You have to get them to play together. You have to focus on a common goal, and you got to face the competition. So
for that, this is from a Patriots fan or a Colts fan that screams about the Patriots cheated all the time.
They didn't cheat all the time.
Just when they played you guys, right? Number 1.
When they played the Colts.
Number 1. We're going to give Lucas a history lesson here. Lucas, number 1 is the 1976 Indiana Hoosiers, and these are the reasons. These are mine, and then Steve can jump in with his. Number 1, you had the greatest basketball coach that ever lived. And he was the greatest basketball coach that ever lived because, similar to Bill Belichick, he fits pieces in his puzzle. And this puzzle was as perfect as you could get for him with the guys he had on that team. But the other thing, and the reason I put this above the UCLA's and all the other ones is, when you look at what they had to do in the tournament, number 1, you had Michigan was one of the best teams in the country. They had to beat them 3 times, counting the championship game. But they started off the tournament against a St. John's team that was ranked in the top 15. They beat them. And then they go to a regional semifinal to play 8th-ranked Alabama. Then they play 2nd-ranked Marquette before they even get to the Final Four. And that Marquette team is the pretty much exact same team that won the national championship the next year. And this was the game that the tournament route was essentially why the NCAA went to seeding, because you had the top 2 teams in the country playing in the regional finals. Indiana beats Marquette 65-56. They then go, and after playing nothing but ranked teams, plays 5th-ranked UCLA and beats them for the 2nd time that year. And they beat them by 20 points in the Final Four. They beat them by I think they beat them fairly easy the first game of the year. I think it was the first Hall of Fame tip-off classic they ever had, where IU basically was asked to play UCLA, who'd won all those years. IU jumps on it, pounds them, beats them in the Final Four. And then in the national championship game, they played the Michigan Wolverines. Michigan basically dominated the first half. We're up by like 7 or 8, 10 points at halftime. And then Indiana comes out and just obliterates them, outscored them by almost 30 points in the second half to beat them 86-68. That's why they're the greatest team of all time, because none of these UCLA teams, you got to remember back then, they didn't seed anything. So it was by region. And by region, UCLA was playing teams like Santa Clara or UC Santa Barbara in the first two rounds. Indiana had to go through and beat basically on their way to winning a national championship. They played 5 games. The lowest ranked team in those 5 games was ranked 15th or 16th. And they beat 3 or 4 teams that were ranked in the top 10. Steve?
Ditto. I mean, I think the only thing I can add to what Mike said was just that I know most all the guys on that team. They helped recruit me coming to Indiana, and those guys were so focused on a common goal and so willing to sacrifice individuality for the better of the common goal of winning a national championship. It was mesmerizing to watch those guys. And I got to go down and see those guys as I was being recruited and spend time with them. And they were no nonsense. I mean, they were a great, tight bunch of guys, and they had fun. But when they got on the basketball court, they didn't think about anything. And it was Knight's prime coaching. I think 81 may have been a better coaching job for him because I don't think he had the overall talent to work with in 81. I think he had more talent in 87 than he had in 81. But in 81, we dug such a hole, he had to fight us out of that hole. But that team was the perfect eating specimen. They were like a shark. They just moved, they hunted, and they ate, and they destroyed.
The other thing that stands out to me, Steve, is we've talked about this where we thought maybe the 75 team was better than 76, and in 75, Scott May gets hurt, which ends that. You got to remember the 76 national championship game, Bobby Wilkerson, who was one of the best players on that team, goes down with a concussion. Indiana falls behind, and I know as an Indiana fan, I remember this. I was only like 8 or 9 years old, but I remember thinking, man, this is just like last year. And the team looked like they thought that through the first half. And then at halftime, they go in, Knight talks to them, they come out and they just destroyed Michigan in the second half.
Yeah, Wade Radford comes in as a freshman, I think, and has just an incredible game and just keeps things in check and fills his role. But, yeah, they lost Wilkerson early in that game. And, Bobby Wilk was just 6'7", true 6'7" point guard who could handle the ball and ran the offense for him, or Quinn ran the offense. But, Wilk was the penetrator, the driver, and so hard to defend. I mean, they lose him that quick. But that's the way that team was. It was next man up with that team. Abers and I got to be good friends, Tom Abernathy, and, I kind of got modeled after Tom a little bit, not ever to the level of he achieved. But you knew your role, and we all relished our role there. And it was just fun to watch a team like that play and to just juggernaut through everybody. When they just stayed focused on their goal and didn't let any outside distractions interfere with them, or they looked at every adverse situation as an opportunity to make themselves better. So I don't think it's even close.
I got a quick question for Lucas. What's the most points ever scored in a half of a national championship game?
You tell me. Was it by the Indiana Hoosier?
1976 Hoosiers in the second half outscored the Michigan Wolverines, who were a great team. I think Steve Grody was the big guy there. Yep. Outscored Michigan 57-33 in the second half. And that Michigan team was a great basketball team.
And it was, 86-68, wasn't it? Wasn't that the final score
of
the game?
It ended up 86-68. Yeah. So, I mean, it was 57-33 in the second half. To this day, that's still the NCAA championship for points scored in a half.
Wow. Yeah. No, those
other teams might have been better, but to me the difference is this, is not because I live in Indiana, it's because of the amount of time. I mean, everybody they beat in the tournament was ranked. I mean, you had to beat the number 2 ranked team, you had to beat the 4, you had to beat the 5, you had to beat the 12 and the 16. I mean, nobody has to do that today.
No, I mean, like the first couple rounds are, a joke for some of the teams nowadays. I mean,
it's not so much that they're jokes nowadays, but that would have been like last year Villanova was a number 1 seed or number 2 seed. That would have been like Villanova would have had to play, North Carolina in the first round and Duke in the second round.
Yeah.
And then you still had 2 more games you had to win to even get to the Final Four, and then maybe you had to play Michigan in the Elite Eight.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was just loaded.
That's a team that when I opened up this whole discussion, I said that I'm going to interject some teams that I loved playing against or would have loved to have played against. I would have loved to have stacked our 81 team up against them. I think we would have matched up with them okay, but I don't know that we had the moxie that team had.
You had Isaiah Thomas, though. They had Quinn Buckner.
It would have been Isaiah. That's the big difference there on our favor. But top to bottom, I don't know. Having known those guys, I don't know that we had the focus that they had.
Yeah, I think athletically you guys may have been the better team, but I think I think the way you guys played in that tournament would say you could play with them, but the way they played all year tells me that when it comes down to it, you're not going to be able to dent them at the end.
That's what I just said, yeah. I think we matched up well, but I don't think we had the moxie that the 76 team did. Oh, we did have Isaiah, which would have balanced things out a lot. Because Isaiah had as much moxie as anybody on the 76 team period. But the rest of us, I think, was just always maybe a quarter of a step or a half step behind that 76 team in terms of just the sheer will determination. I don't think that we had it to the level that they had it. We had it. Obviously, you don't win an SEC championship without having it. But
I think there's at best a handful of teams that had that kind of sheer will and determination.
Right. Yeah. I think the 91, the 92 Duke teams probably had it.
Oh, yeah. Ask Kentucky.
I think 71, 72, 73, UCLA teams had it. I think there's probably more than one UCLA team that had it. I think the 90 UNLV team had it. I mean, the way they played all season.
They were not going to be denied.
No, they were not going to be denied. Exactly right. It's exactly right. And there are a handful of teams that you can pick out that when they did win, that you can just see that it was theirs to lose. They didn't have to go out and try and win it. It was their tournament to lose. I think in 76 it was Indiana's to lose. But they did have a tough road.
Yeah, and like I said, beating them, when that Marquette team was a great team, we found that out the next year, too. Butch Lee, all those guys. Plus, they had the coolest freaking uniforms I've ever seen on a college basketball team.
Yeah, they had the untucked-in shirts.
Yeah.
The shirts hung out.
Yeah, with the little blocks down the side of them like the Aurora Red Devils did in 1977 when they beat you guys.
Who didn't love Al McGuire? I mean,
everybody loves Al McGuire. Dude retired when he was like in his mid-40s and made more money talking about it afterwards.
He called our game in '81. I think he was one of the ones that called our game.
Yeah, him, Billy Packer, and Dick Enberg.
Yeah, and
that was actually the last game they called together.
The last game NBC did, because it switched in '82.
Yeah.
It switched to CBS.
One last game they called. It was the last tournament game they called because they still had games regular season after that. But
then it went CBS.
Yeah, but then it went CBS and Brent Musburger and Jim Nance, and
that's when we lost Kenny Loggins.
They're still not. Oh, Kenny Loggins, This Is It. That was the 1980 and 81 song.
Yeah, you're right.
And you know what? To this day, because of you 1981 Indiana Hoosiers, whenever I hear This Is It by Kenny Loggins, I still get chills.
There you go. I do too. I had that song on my iPhone. In my
great song.
And the thing is this, I was only like 12. You only scored 5 more points than I did.
I know. I've never claimed to be an individual player.
No, I'm not ripping that. I was just making it funny. It's all right.
All right.
I remember you coming in. I remember your first shot. It was a layup.
Yeah, it was actually a tip-in. It actually was the first bucket.
Now my thing is this. When you laid that ball back up and in, when you run it down the floor thinking, man, I just scored in the national championship game.
I pooped my pants.
You pooped your pants?
Pooped my pants.
Well, if you pooped your pants, as short as your shorts were, it would have just dribbled down your leg immediately.
No,
I just wanted to
they were
bring
tight
that
enough.
up,
They were tight enough, too. So.
Because when I played basketball, I've still got the shorts I wore the last time I played basketball, at least when I was at college. And my kids are like, really? These aren't just underwear?
No, that season, in that game, I actually scored the first bucket for Indiana. Like, we hit a couple free throws, but we got off to a slow start. Ted got into foul trouble, like in the first 3 or 4 minutes of the game, and got sat down and never went back in the game. It became the 4 starters, and basically Jimmy Thomas and myself were the 6th rotation for the rest of the game. And I felt bad for Ted, obviously, but because Ted was a great scorer and a great player for us all year long. But I don't know what Knight was thinking there. I don't know if he was either thinking, I'm going with my senior because I just trust my seniors more. He was always a senior dominant player. Or if he just forgot Ted was sitting down there and got so wrapped up in the game.
I've done that before when coaching.
I know. I don't know. I never could.
Well, everything's going good. You don't even look around, and before you know it, Ted doesn't even get to play.
I know. I didn't ever want to ask Knight or Ted that question because I didn't want to upset Ted, and I didn't want to have Knight make some smart-ass comment back to me, which he would have. But I look at it now and I go, he never went back in the game.
Well, see, and the thing about the 81 game, it was similar to the 76, where North Carolina actually had to lead for most of the first half.
Oh, yeah.
And if you look back at your semifinal game, I think you guys were down 8 or 9 points to LSU at halftime.
Yeah. No, we were. I mean, that was Virginia. We were not predicted to win that thing. I mean, we were of the 4 teams in that. LSU was strong that year with Macklin and Scales. Virginia had.
Yeah, but everybody thought Virginia or North Carolina was going to win it.
Right. Yeah, and then North Carolina was the dominant team that went on to win it the next year. But with Wood, Perkins, and Worthy, and they were all 3 All-Americans. And then here we come, and then there's Indiana just plodding along. But no, I don't think we took the lead until I think Whitman hit a jump shot at the baseline right at the buzzer the first half.
Yeah, I still remember that too.
We went up by 1. We flew into the locker room, and we were higher than a kite. I mean, and Knight, just calmed us down and set the strategy for the second half. And he said, basically, everybody get out of his way. Isaiah, take the ball, steal it from Pepper on the first play, go down, shoot a layup, and demoralize him.
Yeah, because I remember this. You remember what it was like when we were younger, and you'd go to any playground in Indiana, and there'd be a bunch of kids playing basketball. And the thing was, after that Whitman shot for the next decade, anytime you're playing on a playground, at least down here, if somebody took a shot from the baseline and nailed it, somebody would invariably yell, Whitman from the corner.
Yep. Yeah, no, that started the run. Whitman started it, and Isaiah came out, and it was probably one of the most individual dominant first 4 minutes of a second half that any college players played. I mean, he single-handedly destroyed North Carolina. We were up 1 at halftime when 4 minutes to go. I think we were up 13 or 14. I mean, we just crushed them in the first 4 or 5 minutes.
Yeah, and the thing that was huge about that is if you don't take that lead and Carolina's up 5 or 6 points with 15 minutes left, then you got to chase them with that stupid 4 corners crap they'd always pull out.
There was no shot clock back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember running around the same thing at the playgrounds. I used to hear kids yell Whitman. I'd see kids out wearing Indiana wearing number 34 jersey.
Right now, I just had a Bobby Knight 1981 moment because I forgot Lucas was sitting on the end of the bench, and we haven't put him back in the game in a while.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, we're rambling.
No, it's been a nice
how easy that happens?
It's been a nice
All right, we're done talking about me. I think we were all pretty close in our list. I think we all had some. I'm sure we left some teams out, but we started going through and researching.
Yeah, the only abomination was putting the 76 users at number 7.
Well, but that's what a Canadian does. I mean,
I know.
Yeah.
It's wonder he didn't have the Montreal Canadiens from 1979 at number 1.
No, I don't like to have.
I didn't figure you did. You're a Maple Leafs fan, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Well, another good show.
Yeah.
Anything else, Mike, we need to get to? Or
I want to remind everybody that we've had really good listenership on the golf show, and make sure that you go check it out on thegruelingtruth.net. The golf show, of course, is Steve Risley and Lukas Weese. I think we are the only golf show in the world with a Canadian on it, so make sure, if you're a Canadian, be a patriot. Go listen to Lucas on the golf show with Steve Risley. Any final words, Lucas?
No, I mean it's I'm lucky enough to be at the PGA Championship this week, the season's final golf major. It should be great. Just arrived in St. Louis, and I was looking forward to the weekend, the tournament, and being back on Survive in Advance.
All right, and also, Steve, we want to remind people that XFL Commissioner Oliver Luck will be with us Friday, and on Monday, former North Carolina basketball player Rashad McCants will be our guest. Any final words, Steve?
No, it's going to be two interesting shows. I mean, obviously, really looking forward to talking to Oliver Luck about where the NFL or the XFL sees its new direction, how they're going to shift things up from their first attempt at this, and who's going to do differently. I think we're going to get some great insight into that. And then Rashad McCants is an interesting story with North Carolina. To tease a little bit, he's kind of one that kind of let out the cat out of the bag about some of the academic misgivings that were going on in North Carolina at the time. Has written a pretty interesting book about it, and I've been trying to read up on the book and read through the book here before we get to talk to him about it. And it'll be two good back-to-back shows on Friday and Monday.
All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap the show for today. We'll be back tomorrow. We're going to talk about the NFL Hall of Fame and some guys that are missing that should be in. Maybe we'll even talk about a few that we wonder why they're in. So make sure you check us out on Survive and Advance tomorrow on thegruelingtruth.net. I want to remind everybody you can now hear all the Grueling Truth shows, including Survive and Advance, on Spotify. Also, of course, as always, iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher. Wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find the Grueling Truth. So for Lukas Weese, Steve Risley, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to the Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.